In face-to-face conversations I've had, as well as some YouTube comments I've read, I've encountered people who insist that the evidence for God, almost always the Christian or Abrahamic God, is all around us. Often this argument is followed by a brief list of things such as trees, rocks, the earth, moon, sun, and stars, which are declared as being evidence of God. Usually this is followed with a declaration that I and/or atheists just refuse to acknowledge it as evidence. In this video, I discuss why I have a problem with this argument for the evidence of God. The following is a fictitious story made for the purpose of illustrating one way in which evidence can work reliably in arriving at a conclusion. Barry Batisman, a burglar, makes sure he wears gloves when he breaks into homes so he does not leave behind any fingerprints. One night he breaks into a home and begins to ransack the place looking for things to steal. Larry Lastlegs, the homeowner, was actually at home at the time of the break-in and was sleeping in his bedroom. Lastlegs is awakened by the noise of the break-in and decides to investigate. Upon seeing Batisman, Larry immediately leaps to the attack and, catching Batisman by surprise, manages to land a solid blow to the burglar's nose, causing it to bleed. Batisman then pulls out a large knife, and he kills Lastlegs by stabbing him repeatedly in the chest and abdomen. When Lastlegs slumps to the floor, Batisman flees the scene, taking with him only the knife he used to kill Lastlegs. Batisman runs to the back lanes and heads towards a nearby park. He ditches the knife in a small thicket of shrubs and runs. Police officers of a passing patrol car spot Batisman, who, dressed in dark clothes, looks suspicious in his mannerism while he runs through the park. They observe Batisman stop near the shrubs, and it appears he throws something in. They decide to investigate. Batisman, seeing the police approach him, bolts in an attempt to escape. The police follow, and soon Batisman is captured. The police officers note that Batisman appears to have blood on his clothes and his shoes. The shrubs are searched and the knife is found. But Batisman claims the knife is not his, and he insists he's never had a knife. Batisman has an outstanding arrest warrant from a previous burglary, and he is arrested. Samples of the blood on Batisman's clothes, shoes, and the knife are taken and sent for DNA profiling. The next day, the postal carrier in the area sees that Larry Lastlegs' front door is wide open and notices what appears to be a trail of bloody footprints leading from the open doorway. Concerned, he calls the police, and an investigation team soon is on the scene. A forensic investigator carefully surveys the scene and takes samples of blood which are sent to a forensic lab for DNA profiling. Most of the blood samples are matched to the victim. However, some of the DNA results do not match Larry Lastlegs' DNA profile, and it's believed the second DNA profile could belong to the assailant. Forensics confirms that the knife found in the park matched the wounds in the victim's body, and blood samples from the knife also conclude as a DNA match for the victim. A DNA sample is taken from Barry Batisman and is found to be a match for the second DNA sample found at the scene of the murder. The presence of Batisman's DNA clearly places him at the scene of Larry Lastlegs' murder. DNA profiling on the second blood sample made it possible to conclusively identify the second person as Barry Batisman. This is but one example of how evidence can work. Everyone's DNA profile is unique, and no two DNA profiles are exactly the same, not even in the case of identical twins. Using DNA, we can identify beyond all doubt to whom a sample of DNA belongs to. In other words, DNA links or points specifically to its owner. We can conclusively link a sample of blood, hair, or any body tissue to its owner through DNA profiling. In simpler terms, we have something, DNA, to link conclusively to someone. Now let's look at a fairly common argument I've seen between theists, usually Christians, and non-theists. The argument is that evidence for God is all around us. One way in which this argument has been presented to me is, when I look at a flower, I see God. Personally, I have a problem with accepting the flower as evidence for God. In this argument, the flower does not necessarily have to be a flower. It can be anything that exists naturally without being processed in some manner by human devices or means. This would mean naturally occurring things such as flowers, rocks, trees, animals, stars, etc., but not man-made items such as coffee mugs, newspapers, microwave ovens, or computers. The problem I have with looking at a flower or any natural object and declaring it as evidence of God is that there's nothing about the object, no feature or attribute, that links it to a deity in any compelling way, let alone a specific deity such as the God of the Holy Bible. Furthermore, there is nothing about the flower that anyone can point to and say, this feature or attribute specifically points to Yahweh and absolutely rules out Vishnu, Ganesha, Zeus, Wotan, or any other deity. The mere fact that the flower exists is not very compelling as evidence because there is nothing about the flower's existence that we can test or study and conclusively arrive at a deity. At best, it seems to me that seeing God in a flower is wishful thinking. Perhaps this is what is meant by faith. If I am to consider anything as good evidence for God, it should, in some manner, link to a deity, just as DNA profiling can link a tissue sample to a specific person. We must be able to test it in some manner, and as a result of such testing, arrive at a conclusion of God without having to rely on presumptions. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to rate and comment, and maybe consider subscribing.